Hello everybody, this is Defeater of Souls, and in an effort to do as little work as possible, we're going to be talking about dragons again. Now, this is going to be a complete release of my last video, so we'll try and keep it serious. What is a dragon? Well, a dragon is just effectively a giant lizard. They have a few attributes that are generally carried over from their appearances in any form of media, such as the ability to breathe fire, but their actual appearances do vary from certain things. For example, the main dragons in Dragon Quest are generally just used to refer to any reptile or lizard. As such, the majority of the dragons in Dragon Quest are just giant lizards. Now, of course, dragons also have a big role in the games themselves, or at least the very first one, considering how the whole series is called Dragon Quest. Now, of course, I could rant about this, but I'm not going to. I'm simply going to say that dragons had a big role in the first Dragon Quest game, but it slowly faded away in the following games as they went with more and more unique storylines. Now, in the very first Dragon Warrior Monsters games, the dragon family was a simple family and an easy one to find too. There are generally multiple dragons, and one of the first bosses in the game was a dragon. Not the very first boss, but one of the first bosses. Now, of course, the green dragon has been around since the original Dragon Quest game, and was the first boss in that too. So, it's actually a reference to the first Dragon Quest game, when the dragon appears in Dragon Quest Monsters. Now, Dragon Quest Monsters 2 doesn't have anything as interesting as that, but that's fine, because it still does have a larger variety of dragon monsters, including ones you don't really see anywhere else, although I'll be making a video talking about unique monsters much later into the future. We're gonna skip Caravan Heart because it's Japanese exclusive. When it comes to Joker, there were dragons. Now, there weren't a lot of dragons, but the family did stick around, and something you may or may not know, depending on how many of my videos you've watched, is that the Joker series has a habit of getting rid of families that they don't have any need for, and grouping families together. Now, of course, the Dragon family, being so iconic that it's in the name of the entire series, was able to stay distinct enough as its own separate group, unlike the likes of the Nature family, if you didn't know. Joker 2, pretty much the same thing. Nothing really worth noting here. Same deal with Joker 3, but except that's Japanese exclusive, so I'm just gonna assume that there's dragons in the game. Because, it's part of the title. Now, of course, if you find a way to prove me wrong, go ahead, but good luck doing that. Finally, if we go all the way to Dark Prince, you'll be able to find that, believe it or not, it does have some more dragons, although it's much bigger, it's still nothing too special. It does solve a small problem that some of the earlier Dragon Quest Monsters games had, which was where they had a bunch of dragons that they didn't need. For example, one of the most easily recognizable ones to me of a reptile that really just didn't need to be in the game was the chameleon, which is, as the name explains, a chameleon. Now, of course, once again, what exactly are these dragons, since I kinda just did a very general go over them at the beginning? Well, they are giant, fire-breathing winged lizards, except when they're missing their wings, or the fire, or the lizard. A few other things to note here is that they often have good resistances to fire and ice attacks as such, which are surprising if you think about Pokemon, but you can't trust Pokemon, you can trust dragons. Now, of course, they're also rather slow. They have good offensive stats, and some decent defensive ones, but they're rather slow, especially when it comes to leveling up. They take a while to level up, much slower than the likes of, say, slimes. Slimes generally level up rather quickly, especially in comparison to dragons as a party member. Now, of course, despite the dragon being the name of the franchise, you're not going to see a lot of him because of how iconic the slimes become. But this isn't about slimes, this is about dragons. So let's talk about some dragons you might recognize. The green dragon has of course been around since the first Dragon Quest game. I've talked about him plenty before. I have a YouTube short about him that I made a little while back that you can watch if you want some more information about him. Another one is the Dragon Kid. He's just a small little guy, but he's still a good guy, and he does good things. Often he can be used to get himself some bigger dragons, but that's not for now. Another guy here is the Haxosaurus Rex. These are giant T-Rexes with battle axes. It's pretty interesting concept because in real life a T-Rex could never hold an axe because of how small their arms are. A few other interesting ones is the king cobra, which is literally just a snake, the crespent, which is a snake that but more interesting. There's the sky dragon and one of the super bosses of re-releases of Dragon Quest III, the Divine Gone. A few other ones here. One of the more recognizable ones is definitely Gascon, but if you don't know who he is, that's fine. Orochi is another common one. He's based off of some Japanese folklore and myths. One of the most recognizable guys that has occasionally been in the dragon family, and you'll know what I mean in the future if you watch other videos of mine, is Dragon Lord, who has dragon in the name and is the final boss of the Dragon Quest game, in case you didn't know that. That's a spoiler alert for you. He's, of course, turns into a dragon, and it's a fun fact, that's one of the first transformations to occur in video game history. One of the first times a final boss is transformed. Dragon Lord has rewritten history, ladies and gentlemen, in the game Dragon Quest. And that is it for this video. It's pretty short, and once again, like I said, it's nothing special. Ideally, there'll be some better ones in the future, but thank you for watching, and feel free to like or subscribe if you would, but if not, that's okay too. This has been Defeater of Souls.